Arthur Schopenhauer once observed that all suffering in life seems to spring from attachment, and if there is any place where that sentence stops being philosophy and becomes flesh, it is grief. Because grief is not an abstract pain. It is not a poetic sadness that visits you for a few minutes and then politely leaves. Grief is the brutal experience of discovering that the world can remain standing while something essential inside you has collapsed. It is waking up in a room that still contains the same walls, the same objects, the same morning light, and yet feeling that reality has been subtly disfigured, as if life continued moving forward while one part of time refused to move at all. And maybe this is the first truth no one tells you clearly enough. Grief is not only pain over who left. It is also pain over the version of you that existed when they were still here. Welcome to Axis Soul. Question yourself, break your certainties, awaken your essence. There is a violence in loss that only those who have loved deeply can understand. The mind keeps trying to negotiate with the irreversible. It replays old conversations, searches for missed signs, rewrites scenes, invents alternative endings, as if enough thinking could reopen a door that reality has already closed. And this is where grief becomes more than sorrow. It becomes an inner courtroom. One part of you is crying, another is accusing, another is bargaining with God, with fate, with memory, with time itself. What if I had called that day? What if I had stayed longer? What if I had noticed something sooner? What if love could have prevented the inevitable? But grief has a cruel intelligence. It knows exactly where your tenderness lives, and it presses there again and again until love itself starts to feel like evidence against you. The Stoics understood something most modern people still resist. Suffering is not only born from what happened, it is amplified by the war we wage against the fact that it happened. This does not mean the loss is unreal. It does not mean you should smile through devastation and call it spiritual maturity. It means that pain and resistance are not the same thing. Pain is the wound. Resistance is the hand that keeps reopening it because it cannot accept that life has changed shape. And maybe this is one of the hardest questions grief forces upon a human being. When someone you love is gone, what exactly is it that dies inside you? Is it only their presence? Or is it also your sense of continuity, your assumptions about tomorrow, your trust in permanence, your image of who you thought you would become beside them? Most people are never taught how to grieve. They are taught how to suppress, how to distract themselves, how to become functional as quickly as possible so they can return to the machinery of daily life. Go back to work. Answer the messages. Be strong. Stay busy. Keep moving. But grief does not obey productivity. It does not disappear because your schedule is full. It waits in the quiet, in the shower, in the car, in the empty side of the bed, in the reflex of reaching for someone who is no longer there. And the more you refuse to feel it, the more it stops being grief and starts becoming architecture. It builds rooms inside your personality. It hardens your voice. It changes the way you attach, the way you trust, the way you love, the way you imagine the future. Unfelt sorrow does not vanish. It reorganizes the structure of your life from the shadows. Think carefully about what grief actually does to time. In ordinary life, time feels like a river. It moves, it carries, it continues. But in grief, time fractures. One part of you is forced into the present, paying bills, answering people, washing dishes, surviving another day. Another part remains kneeling beside what was lost, refusing to leave the scene. This is why grief is so exhausting. It splits the self between two realities, the one that keeps going, and the one that still cannot believe what happened. Physics tells us that what we call solid matter is not as solid as it appears. That form is movement, relation, pattern, a temporary organization of something far deeper than what the eye can grasp. And maybe grief confronts us with a similar truth in human form. We become attached not only to a person, but to a form of presence, a voice, a face, a routine, a body seated across from us. When that form disappears, the mind concludes that the bond itself has been erased. But is love really identical to form? Or have we confused the visible shape of a connection with the deeper reality of what it was carrying? This is where grief can either break you open or slowly bury you alive. If you cling only to form, life begins to feel like theft. Everything becomes evidence of absence. Every memory becomes a knife. Every beautiful thing becomes an insult because the one you love cannot witness it with you. But if you stay with grief long enough without turning away, something subtler begins to reveal itself. You start to see that love was never confined to the body that expressed it. The body was one doorway. The voice was one doorway. The gestures, the habits, the laughter, the ordinary moments were all doorways. But the love itself was always larger than the doorway. And this changes the entire landscape of mourning, because it means your task is not to deny the absence of form, but to stop assuming that absence of form is the same as absence of meaning. None of this removes the ache. Let's be honest. Some losses do not become beautiful wisdom. They remain raw. They remain unfair. They remain incomprehensible. There are days when grief is not philosophical at all. It is physical. It is a pressure in the chest, a refusal in the throat, a fatigue that sleep cannot repair. You look at the world and feel offended by how normal everything seems. People laugh. Traffic moves. Notifications arrive. The sun rises again, as if nothing sacred has been torn from the earth. And maybe that is the hidden humiliation of grief. The world does not stop to honor your devastation. It keeps spinning with a cruelty that is not personal, but still feels unbearable. So do not insult your own pain by trying to turn it into a lesson too quickly. First, let it be pain. Let it be the honest measure of love. But there is also a threshold you cannot ignore forever. At some point, grief asks a second question. Not why did this happen, but how will you live now? And this is the question that frightens people more than sadness itself. Because as long as you remain exclusively occupied with the loss, you do not have to confront the life still asking to be lived through you. To keep breathing is painful. To laugh again can feel like betrayal. To feel desire again can feel disloyal. To rebuild can feel like abandoning the dead. But this is one of grief's darkest illusions. The idea that healing means leaving someone behind. It does not. Healing does not erase love. It proves that love reached deeply enough to change the way you live. The ancient traditions understood that death does not only take people. It takes certainties. It takes identities. It takes the arrogant belief that we control the timing of everything precious. And maybe that is why grief can become a brutal form of awakening. Not because loss is beautiful, but because it strips away the fantasy that life owes us permanence. You begin to see how fragile every embrace always was, how temporary every dinner table was, how miraculous it was that anyone could ever sit beside you at all. And if you allow that realization to mature, instead of turning bitter, grief can teach a terrifying kind of reverence. A reverence for ordinary mornings, for unfinished conversations, for the people who are still here, for your own life, which remains uncertain and breakable and therefore sacred. So what do you do with grief? You stop trying to conquer it. You stop treating it like an enemy to defeat or a weakness to hide. You let it speak without allowing it to become your identity. You make room for tears without building a throne for despair. You remember that mourning someone is not the same as surrendering the rest of your life to the grave. Sit with the photographs. Speak their name. Let memory ache. Let love ache. But then, very slowly, with all the dignity you can gather, return to the living. Eat. Walk. Answer the friend. Open the window. Feel the sun on your skin without apologizing for being here. The person you lost does not need you to die symbolically in order to prove your love. If anything, the deepest tribute may be this: to let the love they awakened in you become a more conscious way of inhabiting the world. Grief is love with nowhere obvious to go, so give it a direction. Let it become tenderness. Let it become presence. Let it become courage. Let it become truth. Carry the memory, but do not carry the sentence that your life must end because a chapter did. The wound may remain. The longing may remain. Certain nights may still collapse inward without warning. But little by little, if you stop resisting the fact that love and pain arrive together, you discover that grief was never asking you to stop loving. It was asking you to learn how to love without possession, to remember without drowning, and to keep living without feeling guilty for the miracle of being the one who remained. Stay with what is true. Honor what was real, and do not bury your own life beside what was lost. Awaken your essence. Axis Soul.